where they're coming from.
Well, Shane Greer is still with me from Total Politics magazine. Political commentator Lorraine Davison as well. Professor John Tong is still with me. And also our new voice, Jonathan Davis, an investment advisor. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Tony.
Thanks very much for joining us, Jonathan. Now, this, I would say, is critical to the government's plans. Alongside the cuts that we've heard about today, there must be growth, or really the review, I would say, is fundamentally bound to fail. Can the private sector, as is imagined, Jonathan, in your opinion, pick up these, or a great proportion of these 490,000 jobs?
Well, it's not going to be just 500,000 jobs lost in the public sector. There will be also 500,000 jobs lost in the private sector, because inevitably the public sector, which is about 6 million strong, keeps part of the private sector going. No, of course not. If you get 1 million jobs extra unemployed, taking us to about 3.5 million unemployed, inevitably we're going to go straight back into recession. But that's not the point. The point is, you keep asking this evening about what is the alternative, what else can we do? Do people seriously believe that if Gordon Brown had won the election and he'd sacked Alistair Darling, because of course they don't get on, and he'd put in his best mate Ed Balls as Chancellor, do people seriously believe that there would have been £1 of cuts? You know, Alan Johnson and Ed Miliband talk about they would have done 20% cuts. They might have done, but if Gordon Brown had won the election, there wouldn't have been £1 of cuts. What would that have meant? It would have meant that instead of the Bank of England interest rate being 0.5%, I can tell you today it would be 5%. By the end of next year, it would be 10%. Mortgages would be 12, 13, 14%.
Okay.
What does anyone think that would do to the economy?
I'm unsure, Jonathan, of the point you're making. Are you making the point that, well,
we have to do it?
We have to do it, but it's still not going to work, because you've just pointed out that
in the short term, it's going to be a short-term pain. Look, we've had 10 years.
Well, 1 million lost jobs is more than pain, isn't it,
absolutely, a lot of pain for those who are living off benefits. Many are going to be in pain. For the middle classes, there's going to be pain. There's going to be a lot of pain. But let's get serious. Let's be real here. We've had 10 years of an orgy of debt and spend. We now have, because of the biggest debt bubble in history, now because of a credit crunch, which is global, which is continuing, we have the economic hangover. That is the reality.
All right, well, look, let's talk about the reality, because we're talking about the pain people are going to feel. I'm in the public sector, I might feel it. Frank is in Manchester, and Frank's already felt it today. I'm not sure we can put this down to the public sector spending review, Frank, but just tell us what's happened to you today.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put it down to today's spending review, but it's most definitely due to, shall we say, forward planning with a view to what's happening.
Right. What's happened, Frank?
I work for a public sector contractor working for a local authority. And welcome to the world of redundancy.
You've been made redundant today?
I've been made redundant today.
What explanation did they give you, Frank?
The explanation is that the company, which I stress is a public sector local authority owned company working as a contractor for another local authority, is anticipating a downturn, and I use the word anticipating, in its income stream. And therefore, in advance of the situation, has been going through a redundancy exercise this summer. And it's undertaken the very strange path of attacking its profit centre, the very people who earn the revenue stream that keeps it going.
So the cuts have already begun, Frank, and you're one of the first human victims we've heard of tonight. Then
absolutely.
What do your fellow workmates say? What do they say? What's the mood at the moment?
Very, very interesting to watch the human psychology. In that, obviously, the team that has been the target of this reorganisation has been fairly active in trying to reduce the impact of this exercise. But the people who aren't affected have hunkered down as if to try and avoid the fallout. Very much, I would say, in the vein of, well, thank God it isn't me this time.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting to watch.
Every man for himself, really. Frank, I want to ask you one more question, and it's quite pertinent to what we're discussing now. Do you feel confident you'll find another job in the private sector very soon?
Well, I mean, we're being told that we're supposed to work longer until we retire. Well, I become eligible for my post-dated bus pass in about 7 days' time. So you know how sexy I am on the job market now.
All right. Well, Frank, we do wish you well. If you're looking for work, we do wish you well. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Problem.
There he goes. 0500 909 693. Lorraine Davison there. You heard Jonathan Davis talking about the disaster that it would be if Labour were in power now. Do you agree?
No, I mean, I think there is a debate within the Labour Party about, whether you cut the speed of the cuts. But I think Alistair Darling was the kind of rational voice when he said you have the deficit within 4 years. That would still have meant a lot of pain, a lot of cuts. But I think Labour's point going into the election, and I think it was a message that they didn't get across because it was too complicated a message, actually. I think the electorate understood a party that was actually saying, you want cuts, we're your people, we'll do it. We know what we're going to do here to turn this around. Whereas Labour's approach was much more to say, yes, there need to be cuts, but we're going to do them slowly because we don't want to choke off the recovery. Now, to people sitting at home, it just sounded a bit wishy-washy. Are you doing it or are you not doing it? It just sounded a bit in the middle. But actually, in terms of the economy, I think it was spot on because at the moment, George Osborne, it has to be said, has been utterly consistent. It's the same position that they had during the election that he stood up and delivered today. He's seeing it through. And if he'd pulled back, you might have seen a reaction in the markets.
OK. Well, as Shane alluded to earlier on, Ed Miliband's position, or certainly a position he advocated recently, was perhaps more reliance on taxation than we have now. He even said 50-50, 50% cuts, 50% taxation. Jonathan Davis, do you not see that as a solution? Would that have helped?
I go back to 1920, 1921, when we had similar cuts to what we're having now, and the economy went down 16%. And you know what? It was back on keel with